Okay, Chaver, good morning. V'siyata d'shmaya, we jump back in to Torah Chof Aleph, and these are very severe moments. I don't know if anybody just saw the news. It just was on the news this morning that a missile struck a hospital in Beersheba, Soroka Hospital, and a building in Tel Aviv. So we have to have a special kavanah that our learning this morning should be a schus for anybody who's affected by that, and Hashem should protect Klal Yisrael in these very intense moments in our history. This morning's shiur is also kindly sponsored by Bernard Bulag for the refuah shlema of Meital Nili Bas Geulah Zisel. Should have a complete refuah shlema and a proper development and recovery. Siyata d'shmaya. So we jump in to Torah Chof Aleph, and yesterday we were speaking about the moichin, right? About the moichin and how to give birth, so to speak, to clarity, and what it means to cry out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu 70 times, which are the 7 koilos, which can counteract the 7 days of Mitzayra as a result of being poigim, right, in the R Hapanim of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is correlated to the 7 days of Sheva Brachos, to the Chuppah, and the 7 days of Sukkot, and the Sukkah, and the 7 branches of the Menorah, right? That's basically everything that we've been learning about, and how to be moiled those moichin, how to live with paradox, and how to integrate it in such a way where our lives can reflect the totality of paradox, because a paradox always has 2 sides that don't seem to jive, right? They don't seem to go together, but somehow living a life with moichin, with consciousness, can enable a person to live in 2 places at once, can enable a person to be able to live with both the ratzai as well as the shoiv, etc., 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 in all the ways that we described earlier. So here Rebbe Nachman takes it to the next, or Nachman takes it to the next level, and Rebbe Nachman is going to explain this because it's very deep. And the Rebbe says that actually it isn't just for the purposes of our avodas Hashem per se, that integrating moichin, that living life with the birthed sense of clarity. We said Ki Yaakov Bachar L'Kai Yaakov is the lower level, Yisrael L'Skulasai, right? To live with that Yisrael, that level of Li Roish Asher Becha Espaer, which is the level at which the Espaer, which is Tiferes Becha, enters in. That's what we learned yesterday, which is the same aspect of the Gemara that told us that tzaddikim are yoshvim ba'atreisehem and their crowns are biroishehem. It isn't just for the purpose of being able to connect to Hashem in a deeper way and to live with Ratzav V'Shoiv and to live with the moichin of the tzaddik and to live with Shefa Kodesh, Lashon HaKodesh, Ruach HaKodesh, everything that we've been speaking about, Yaakov Avinu, Geulah consciousness. Says the Rebbe goes even deeper than that. There's a very practical consideration to a person who has integrated moichin on such a level where they're able to live with that clarity. They're able to live mamish with Hashem. And he says, you know what that practical implication is? Nachamu. Nachamu. A person's able to live with a sense of comfort and consolation no matter what they're going through. As the pasuk tells us, Nachamu Nachamu Ami. HaKadosh Baruch Hu consoles us. Be consoled, my people, my nation. So says Rebbe Nachman, and it's a theme that he echoes in a number of places, as we're going to see later on in our journey through Likutei Moharan, most notably Torah Rish Nun and Torah Samach Hey, and in a number of other teachings, Rebbe Nachman echoes this same theme. And he says like this: Kol hatzaros v'yisurim v'hagalus einay elo lefi erech chesron hadas. He says all of the pain that we go through, all of the suffering, and all of the exile, einay elo lefi erech chesron hadas, is only in accordance with our lack of true consciousness, true emunah. Because kishenishlam hadas, when a person's mind is complete, as nishlam kala chesronos, then all of the things that they perceive to lack are complete. Now that doesn't mean, to be clear, that all of a sudden they have parnasa, and they have refuah, and they have banachayim azayna, everything they need. Lav dafka. But it means that the way that they experience that They say you could feel pain, but suffering is a choice. Right? To suffer is to languish, is to just really soak in it, and that we don't have to do. That we do in direct proportion to the extent of a lack of das that we have, which is the lack of living with the clarity of emunah. In a clear way, via data yoim v'ashivoisa elavavecha ki Hashem alikim b'shamayim ma'aval arts mitachas, and everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is for the best. Kol mada avid rachman letav avid gamzu letayva. To the extent that a person lives with that, as I nishlam kol chesronos. Because whatever I perceive to be a chisaron is actually not a chisaron. It's actually exactly the way it's supposed to be. Now, from my experience, like we said, the paradox of Yediyah, right, and Bechira, from this moment on, I need to choose. But looking back and looking, therefore, into the way that that the past has overwhelmed the present and currently fills our present circumstance, we can look at that with das and say, whatever is going on is exactly the way that it needs to be. As I nishlam kol chasoinos, but Bechina says, as the Gemara says in a Darim, famous Gemara, in das kanisa machasarta. If a person doesn't have das, so then they have nothing, and if a person has das, so then the Gemara says machasarta. So you don't lack anything. Machasarta. The ikra chayim anitzchim yila asid machmas hadas. Says the Rebbe, the reason why people will live forever, lasid lavai, and ubila hamavas lanetzach, death and destruction will cease from the earth forever and ever, is as a result of machmas hadas, sheyar behadas, that the human consciousness will expand and expand and expand. Sheyedu hakalas Hashem, where every single human being, and maybe even every animal, will know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'al yidei hadas, and what's the definition of das? What does this mean to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Yuchlulu ba'achdusai. Like Rebbe Nachman says later on, we're going to see in Torah Beis in the second volume, Rebbe Nachman says, closeness with Hashem is knowledge of Hashem. Because you can't get closer or further. Hashem is already there. It's not about, you can't get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can become more aware of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's closeness. Then you're close. You're already close. Hashem is everything. So the question is there an obstacle we're going to see in Torah Chof Lamed? Am I putting an obstacle in front of myself? If I remove the obstacle, then I feel the closeness. So la'asid lavai, by virtue of an expansion of our consciousness that we currently can't grasp, a little bit we can taste glimpses of, but we can't really grasp what that's going to be. But yuchlulu ba'achdusai, we will become unified within HaKadosh Baruch Hu's oneness, va'az yichyu chayim nitzchim kamayu. And then we'll really live forever. And we're going to see that there's a bechina of this even in this world, as we're going to see soon. Ki al yedei ha'yediyah nichlalim bai. Because through knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we become part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like the philosophers say, Ili yadativ hayisiv. If I would know him, I would be him. What separates between our consciousness and Hashem's consciousness is that we cannot fully understand Hashem. We cannot fully understand above time and space. We cannot fully understand infinity, or at all. We cannot understand what he is. If we would know him, we would be him. Meaning that's the fundamental, definitive, distinctive boundary between what it means to be God and what it means to be fundamentally not God, is that we're limited in our das. So the philosophers understood that Iliyadativ, if I could rise to the level where I would grasp what Hashem grasps, I would be God, and then I would be him. Says the Rebbe, that's actually going to happen, la'aseh lavai. Our das is going to expand to such a degree that all the makifim will enter pnim, and we will wake up with great revelations, great shocking revelations that currently we can't even grasp how this is possible, because the human brain currently is so limited that all of us experience hard pan limitations. You meet a brick wall, but la'aseh lavai, that will be removed. And the human brain will have the capacity, or we're going to be able to tap into different parts of the brain that we currently cannot access, or different ways of the brain interconnecting in such a way that we could really experience alternative, altered states of consciousness, but not for a few minutes at a time, but consistently, with total clarity and the purification of the koach hamadama, and we have no clue what we're capable of with our brain. No idea. And la'asid lavai, that's going to be the secret. We're going to expand to finally be able to fully live, not just to believe, but to live with the reality that we are sparks of the divine. And we'll wake up to that. Now we know it as a concept. But imagine what that actually means if we could live in such a way where there's synonymity between us and Hashem. Synonymity. Where we no longer relate to Hashem as Hashem is here and I'm here, even though we speak so often and so beautifully. I think it's so important to speak about the relationship panim bepanim, right? And the two kruvim and anila doidi v'doidi li. This is all still within an olam hazeh framework where we and God are two separate things. Then you speak about relationship. Then you speak about kutshabrichu shchinte. Then you speak about yom chasunasei matan Torah. Hashem gives us something. Ki'ilu, these three things are separate. But the truth is, and the Zohar Kadosh says it, and all of us pay lip service to it, but we can't really grasp it. But the Zohar says, Oy Raisa, v'kutshabrichu v'Yisrael chad. We are one. We are actually one with Hashem. This thing that we speak about in these abstract terms is some theoretical construct, like a philosophical being, just created the world. We are Him. We are literally Him. That's a high level of consciousness. Most people can't even grasp that for a second, much less live with that mamish. But the Rebbe says one day it'll happen. Kehal Yedidim nechlalim bai. And that will be the merging of humanity back into God. And one day, yes, that will be the case, not ilu. It will be true, yedativ, and therefore hayisiv. And when will be the time for that? La'asid lavai. As the pasuk says, umala ha'aretz deya. The whole world, but over here the terminology aretz always connotes the lowest levels, the most physical, the most limited, artzius. Umala ha'aretz deya. Even the lowliest levels will be saturated with consciousness. And there will be a proliferation and a revelation of all the consciousness that's already latent throughout creation will just become conscious. Because the makifim will come pnim. And therefore, machmas hadas leyachzar kol tov, and then everything will be good. Via kulay tov, and then we're going to be able to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu's master plan. We're going to be able to see and understand, like we keep on saying, az yimale schaik pinu, in ways that we can't grasp it. Everything kolel hakol, we can't grasp it, and it's not proper for us to talk that way. In relation, especially to things going on now. We just began the shir, right? People are suffering, right? So we can't even say it, because it's not an olam hazeh concept. Only lasid lavai. But then we're going to be able to turn around, because he says, "Kamay mechachmin is one of the rachel." The Rebbe Nachman quotes often, and we already learned this in Torah Dalet, I believe. Atwa idna lav echadu, where the Gemara says now Hashem is not one. The terutza, what terutza, and they answered la'asid kulay hatayva hametiv. La'asid lavai, when the oneness is revealed, it will all be hatayva hametiv. That's it. Everything, we're only going to make the bracha hatayva hametiv on everything. And again, not that everything will be good, but that there will no longer be a distinction between something good and something the opposite. Because at that moment, not just now we believe it, but we can't live that way, because tachlis, a person suffering, you help them. There's no. But la'asid lavai, it's going to be revealed that every single thing that happened is kulay ha'toiva ha'meitiv. Kulay ha'toiva ha'meitiv. Va'afilu ha'akam yedu b'yisr nadas. Here the Rebbe returns to one of his favorite topics, the non-Jews. Va'afilu ha'akam yedu b'yisr nadas. Even the non-Jews will also wake up to a proliferation of consciousness. Avaloi kamaynu. But the distinction that we laid out into our Yud Zayin, right, it remains. The priesthood sect has a different job. And we will have a different layer of das, because that's correlating to, right, how the system works. As you move up, right? And so everyone moves up. So the makifin of Klal Yisrael enter. They become the makifin for the Umas Olam, and their current makifin enter, right? And then we get new makifin. And so that's the way that the system works hierarchically. The Yedu Geulah Shaylam Ashifla Shaylana Bisman Galos, and it's gonna be clear to them that the Geulah that they have, or that they had, V'ashifla Shaylanu Bisman Galos, and this, that Klal Yisrael was embarrassed and was downtrodden and was kicked out from place to place so that people can write online. There's a reason they've been kicked out of 137. These are the chosen people, these are the cursed people, etc. Right? This is the way that people think. All the shiftless that we've experienced, Kol Zois HaGedula Hayalanu. They don't understand that we are the suffering servant. Again, I mentioned this irony, right? That they think we suffer because we killed the suffering servant. They are causing us to suffer. You see this incredible irony. They doing to us collectively what they claim we did to them, or to him. Because really, we are the suffering servant. Right? I'm talking about the prophecy in Yeshayahu, Parak Nun Gimel. We. And they can't understand that right now. And then they'll wake up. They'll wake up and they'll say, oh my goodness, the Torah was really true. They'll see it. And I think they're starting to see it. I think they're starting to see it. Because how could it be that this little land, I mean, it's like one of those like videos of like this one person being attacked by like 15 people in like the cartoons and just knocking them all out, and like it's just unbelievable. And I think that it'll only continue and continue and continue and continue and continue. Daven should continue. People should wake up. They should see who we are. We should see who we are, and we should show them who we are. They're gonna see Kol Zois HaGedula Hayalanu. Afal Pi She'achshav Ef Shalahavin Kol Zeh. We can't understand this completely. They can't understand this completely. Because at the end of the day, this is the reality, and that's why I mentioned before. These are three important words, by the way. Meaning, even though we believe that this is true, we live in reality. And the reality, go back to Taradality. Remember, Rebbe Nachman said, there is Ratzai, there's times of expanded consciousnness, nullification into the ayin, into that state of nothingness. But then you come back to this reality. Hashem wants that we should serve Him here. So ein lahachish achush, afal pikin yarba hadas. But then all of the closed perceptive like windows will just open. Everything will open up. Everything will open up in ways that we can't even understand. It will turn out to be that the limits of our mind that we thought was a wall was actually, the whole thing was just a collapsible wall. Like it'll all be moved aside, and infinite consciousness in ways that we currently can't grasp. Only some people a little bit can grasp. If you've had experiences of altered consciousness in one form or another, a little bit you can grasp it. But if you haven't, most people cannot grasp this at all. But la'asad lave, this is what's going to happen to every single person. It will be forever. All the walls will collapse and we will merge back into the infinite. Legamri. So what's going to happen? Afal pikin yarba hadas, and I happen to believe that part of the reason why, these substances are so popular today, especially with from Jews. Again, in seeking healing, I'm talking about plant medicine, psychedelics, different things. I believe Hashem is moving us toward a reality where people are going to need to have tasted this a little bit, and that those people who have for one reason or another tasted that in the appropriate way, in the proper setting with the right people, and only in the right conditions, right, and for the right healing, etc. They come back with expanded concepts and are able to bring those into the klal, so that most of the people who will not ever have experiences like that will yet be able to benefit from those expanded states. By the way, that's what the Torah is. The whole purpose of the Torah is to try to communicate to us values that are rooted in a fundamentally different realm. Certainly the Torah of the Tzaddik, right? Everything that the Tzaddik is delivering us is values, and is not values like moral values, is concepts that come from there, that come from that place. Oneness, goodness, infinity, boundlessness, contextualizing suffering, resolving paradox. All of this is there. That's that realm, and the tzaddik goes to that place. He knows what that place is. Tov, and he comes back and he gives us Torah that's helping us to be able to perceive that realm. But la'asid lavai, that's going to be the reality for everyone. For everyone. How that'll happen, I have absolutely no idea. It is, I think, notable, as my Rebbe Moshe Weinberger pointed out to me in a conversation on the topic, that the whole Navi Yoel, which speaks about Az Eshbach Ruchial called Basar V'nivu B'neichem U'B'nei Seichem, is all about plants. The entire thing from Yitchila V'ad Soif is all about crops and plants and Ayin Sham. Well, yes, but Nachon, but then it speaks about the proliferation. So what do we know? We don't know anything, but we see that things are shifting. Things are shifting. Consciousness is very in. People are having experiences. So we live in this reality, but we believe that there is another way to perceive. What we currently are as humans it's not the whole picture. It is not the whole picture. And then they'll understand everything. Shegdulasan shala'akam was actually hayalanu gedula, v'lehema shiflus. That on the contrary, what they thought were downtrodden were their kohanim. They just didn't know it, and they're the Yisraelim, and it could be right, meaning in correlation. Kala koifer va'akam nikra Yehudi. V'lehema shiflus. V'lachayra yidiyah gedayla. Now, l'chayra, that would be. That's going to be like what to us currently is so simple, because we live with that emunah, even though we don't see it and we don't experience that mamish, but we live with this emunah. But can you imagine the whole world waking up to that? What level of consciousness it will be for them to be able to access even our simplest concepts that we currently have? Think of it for a minute. The things that we take for simple, pashut, things. How are you going to communicate that to a person whose ideas are so fundamentally other? This would be a huge revelation if the whole world woke up to this alone, just that one thing. And then you talk about all of the Torahs in this sefer, and then you speak about all of the Torahs that it's not even comprehensible how much we have in relation to where they're at. This is a perfect example of makif and pnim that are relative. What to us that's what the Rebbe is saying. What to us currently is pnim is makif to them, and la'asid lavai, that will be their pnim. Then they'll wake up to it, and then we'll rise to the next madrega. So the Rebbe says, now, to them, that's like an extraordinary, like mind-blowing awakening to be able to see that, which we see Jewish history, human history, how everything was revolving around this, how it's all about this Jewish people and about them getting kicked out. It's the same story, and here they came back to Eretz Yisrael, and here they're fighting the final battles, and this is Esav, and this is Yishmael. What to us is so pashut, to them will be Shdia Gedolah. What to them, they'll be blowing their mind. It's like a havdil. It's like a fresh bal tshuva. Like the simplest, smallest details is like, and you're like, because a person's learning, Kabbalah, Hasidus, the deeper ideas. It's like gewalt. Like it's so amazing to see the sweet Jew who the smallest concept is already like so exciting, but it's lilag. It's like it's a cute thing. You smile, But in relation to where a person who's more advanced is at, and this person he hasn't seen anything yet. And it's exciting because you know that there's so much more to go. Says the Rebbe, it will be it will be a joke in accordance with our pnim that then become our future makif that then becomes pnim when we rise to the next level. You see, so everything is relative. They'll rise up into our current consciousness. We will rise up into that futuristic consciousness. Says the Rebbe, listen to how he reads these psukim. It's mind-blowing. V'zehu az yimalei schayk pinu. He says this is the meaning of then our mouths will fill with laughter. Az yaimer b'goyim higdal Hashem lasasim eila. Then it will be said by the nations of the world, higdal Hashem lasasim eila. Wow, Hashem is great. Allahu Akbar. You know, Hashem has mamish been running this show from the outset, and the Torah is really true, and they're going to be astounded by that. Higdal Hashem lasis imanu. When Hashem is lasis imanu, when Hashem does great things for us, ayinus meichem. Says the Rebbe, what does this mean? Sheyedu v'yayimru hagedula sha'asa imanu. The nations of the world will wake up to the realization that Hainu ma'akum, whatever Hashem gave them, higdal Hashem lasasim eila. Hagedula hazayis ha'ili Yisrael. That the truth is, it was always ever about this people. We really do believe that. It was only ever about Klal Yisrael. We are the chosen people. And we were chosen for a mission, for a task, which means that it was only ever about all humanity, and really more expanded, it was only ever about all of creation. True. But the Geulah it belongs to us. Afal pikein az yimali schayk pinu. Because otherwise you read the pasuk, what's the correlation between the laughter and az yamer b'gayim higdal Hashem lasasim? L'chara, that's a good thing. So maybe you'll say al pi pshat that we will laugh because it will be so happy, it will be so joyous when they finally wake up. Says the Rebbe deeper. We're like sort of making fun, like that again, not making fun in a mean way, but it's like we're gonna find it amusing. That's what it is. We're gonna find it amusing that all of a sudden they woke up, pitom, like where have you been? You know, they're gonna wake up to this that has been so obvious to us for thousands and thousands of years, for which we've given our lives through fire and water, be'ishav amayim. So. Az yimali schayk pino shenin. Why? Because az yomer bagayim higdal Hashem lasasim eila. All of a sudden, pitom nafal asibon. You know, they say the penny dropped and boom, a person all of a sudden sees it. That will be funny to us. That will be amusing, and we'll say like, too little, too late. You know, nebuch. But maybe it's not too late. You know, and it'll be funny to us. We will find their newfound awareness, the entering in of that makif, we will find that amusing and funny. Because our makif that will then have entered, in order for their makif to enter, right? Because it's all one system, will be, says the Rebbe, will be infinitely beyond that, without any end. Now, like we said, it's endless, right? So for every pnim, there's a makif, and that makif is pnim in relation to the makif above, and that makif is pnim, etc. Tzadikim eila menucha la'ba'alam hazev la'ba'alam haba shenemar yelchu michayil el chayil. Right? It goes on forever. There's no end. It's infinite. So there's constant, infinite waves of pnim and makif and pnim. And the distinction between that is human consciousness and what it's capable of accessing at that moment. I want to make this clear. There's really no distinction between Makif and Pnim. From the standpoint of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's just infinite moichin. So where is the distinction between Makif and Pnim? Our limitation. What is below our threshold of limitation, meaning we have integrated it, we call that Pnim. That which is beyond is Makif. But I don't want people to think that like there's Makif Pnim, Makif Pnim, Makif. No, you understand, it's all one R, and in relation to us, one part of that R is then called Pnim, and the next level up is called Makif. Right? But there's no fundamental distinction between the Makif and Pnim. And it's a very, very important thing to understand. Because really it's the site of Yichud Kutchabrichu Shchinte. There is no Shchinte, it's all Kutchabrichu. In relation to the way that we experience reality, we can draw a distinction between the godliness that we encounter within the created realm, right, which is the Chiyas that's here, and then the concept of Kutchabrichu. The MS is Bashamayim Imal Vala Arts Midachas Ein Oid. There's no difference, and that's the Yichud Kutchabrichu Shchinte. Which is the echad, which is waking up to the realization that we are Him. We are, right? And there's no distinction at any point. And the Chalal Pano is actually full of light kaveri shaina. And actually there is no Bechira. And actually everything is just the R of the Ein Sof. Okay, but we don't live that way. Go back at Reiki, Ein Lahachish Achush. It's not our reality. So in our reality there's Shchinte and Kuchabrichu. In our reality there's male and female. In our reality there are chilukim that are real, right? And Hashem wants us to live with those chilukim. V'la'asid lavai yasagasenu ein sofikates. Now, by idea again, yesh ba makif umakif lamakif. In relation to our understanding, every makif has a makif, and that makif is a higher makif. The SD card is getting full. So, is this recording? Okay, Beseder. We'll switch to this. Okay, yeah, makif umakif lamakif. Move el ala pasuk. Like we said about right? You go higher and higher and higher into the makif that are into the makifin that are accessible again through a person's neiros, right? To the openings of a person's face that a person works on cleansing and clarifying these senses, that a person stands guarding the ears, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, in all the correlate aspects that we spoke about in the beginning of the lesson. Says the Rebbe, okay, fine. So now that we told you that das equals nechama, because im das kanisa mechasarta, if a person really lived like the Breslover Hasidim lived, and the Breslover Mashpia mamish lived with this, that nothing could shake them in the world. Nothing could shake them. They had the most difficult lives in Ukraine, pogroms, and then what they suffered in the Holocaust, and then coming to Eretz Yisrael, rebuilding, and you read the stories of the tzaddikim. They integrated this. From that perspective, imdas kanisa machasarta. So you don't have anything. All you have, you don't lack anything. You have everything, right? And to live with simcha, that's mitzvah gedaliyas b'simcha tamid, and to live with yishav das, bein ba'aliyah, bein b'yerida, in their own personal lives, they didn't flinch. They just got up and they carried on, and they realized this is akol mishamayim. Everything is from Hashem. That's a nechama, and like we said, there are endless layers of makifin. Says the Rebbe, that's pshat. Nachamu Nachamu. Nachamu Nachamu, because the nechama is the makif, and we know that there are layer after layer of makifin. Says the Rebbe, okay, so Nachamu Nachamu, makif, and then a makif to the makif. Hainu makif umakif l'makif, right? That is a reference to the higher and higher and steadily increasing layers and levels of being able to integrate the reality of Ein Oid Milvadei. Nachamu Nachamu Ami. So there's consolation after consolation, then a higher consolation, then a higher consolation, infinitely. Nachamu Nachamu. Shayidiyahu ikra nachama shel kol hatzaros. We said that the idea is the ultimate nachama for all tsar. So, okay, so how do you get to that? How do we access Nachamu Nachamu Ami, which is the Makifin? The Eichav Shalabal ideas. How do you get there? And the answer is Yoimar Elikechem. Amira is Chashai, right? Elikim is always harsh, takif. Amira is whispering. I'm sorry, not Elikim, Dibor. Yeah, Dibor, right, which is related to the Shem Elikim. Dibor is Lashon Kasha, and Amira is Chashai, is whispering. And the Zohar Kadosh says, as Rav Nassan's going to explain in a minute, the Zohar says Yayin is loud, wine is loud, it produces noise. Shemen is silent. That's what the Zohar says. Wine is loud. The energy of wine is loud, and the energy of shemen is very smooth. Is very silent. It's like the sun and the moon. Yayin and shemen, different energies. Says the Rebbe. Okay, so Yoimar is a reference to shemen, beautiful. That's a reference to the lighting of the 7 candles, right? Which is that we should purify the openings of our face, which lead to the mind, which is the moichin. And how do you get that? How do you get to Yoimar? How do you get to the shemen, which is silent? And the answer is Elikim, which is la'arama kola, to lift up our voice and to cry out, V'chinas Elikim al dami lach. Elikim, do not be silent. And so we see Elikim, which is Takalosh and Kasha, which is Dibor, which is Napachashai, is if you want to get to the silence, you first need to scream out HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the tza'aka that we spoke about, in order to be moilid. You remember that the Isha is having a hard time giving birth needs to cry out those 7 koilos, 70, right? 7 times 10, 70 koilos that are contained within the 7. And again, going back, those trigger the breaking down of the 7 days of Miriam's saras that go ahead and open up the inyan of Kedushin, the Chuppah, Shef HaKodesh, Lashon HaKodesh, Ruach HaKodesh, the 7 days of the Sheva Brachas, and then the 7 days of Sukkot, and the Schach, and the Sukkah. Elikim, the Tza'aka, Elikim al Damilach. That then brings you to the Shemen, which is Amira B'chashai. Shemen is silent. This is something like by Eliyahu Hanavi, Loi b'rash Hashem. The first, there's noise, very loud noise, and then there's a Kol D'Mamadaka. But in order to get to the Kol D'Mamadaka, sometimes there needs to be rash. What's the rash for? Loi b'rash Hashem. That's right. That's why there's a rash, because Loi b'rash Hashem, because we're trying to get to Hashem. And there needs to be koilos of rakim first. There needs to be tza'aka screaming out.
So how avoid it to get there?
Yes,
We got to move something.
We got to move. Very intense.
No energy.
That's right. Got to break through it and move and move and move. And then when you get there, silent. You break through, and then it's just you're there. So says the Rebbe. This is pshat here. Nachamu Nachamu Ami. If we want to get to the Nechama, this is a good mashal for eating you, though. When it's full, it shuts down. It's not just it stays on. Huh? No, that's what I mean. That's what we should be like the video camera. It said full, and then it went off. Didn't keep on eating. So went for a nap. So this is pshat in the pasuk. Nachamu Nachamu Ami. We want to get those makifin, makif. How do you get that? Yoimar. We have to clean our face out, right? Yoimar. How do you do that? Elikim al damilach, by crying out, by screaming out. Says Rebbe Nachman, Siman Chof ad kan is Lashon Rabbeinu Zal.
Where was Siman Ka?
Huh?
Where was Siman Ka?
Torah Chof.
Oh.
Yeah, Torah Chof. So he calls a siman here. Torah Chof Aleph is Lashon Rabbeinu, which is interesting. Oh yeah, it does say Lashon Rabbeinu on the outside of Chof Aleph. And of Chof, and here Rebbe Nachman takes over. Okay, Rebbe Nachman is going to first explain what we just learned, and then Rebbe Nachman is going to bring us into a whole other, not really other Indian, but a connected Indian in a very deep way. Says so. First, Rebbe Nachman explains what we just spoke out outside. We're going to go through it quickly. Says Rebbe Nachman, Perish. Ki mavur la'ela was explained earlier. Shal yidei tza'aka zeichel lahoiled amoichem mita'alu masan. That the tza'aka enables us to reveal and to give birth to this consciousness from its hiding place. And to the extent that a person cleans out and kindles thereby the 7 candles, which is correlated to oil, that oil is silent, like we learned, and he's going to explain. This enables us to be able to bring the Geulah consciousness of Echad and Toiv and Yishav Adas and oneness, etc., to bring it down into our minds, because we need 2 things in order to access the das. Step 1 is to scream, right? Is to give birth to the moichin. Because as we said earlier, many times the moichin and the shefa is hiding. And like we said, Rebbe Nachman is just explaining, because Rebbe Nachman's words are more terse. Rebbe Nachman had a better, Rebbe Nachman was the moon. He expresses the light of the sun in a clearer way. So we need to cry out in order to birth them, in order to bring them into manifestation. And afterwards, then when the moichin are born, but there's still a pinim to the moichin, which we wanted to access, right? And that was the purpose of tza'aka, is to unlock what's already pnim, right? This is a new thing. The Rebbe didn't say this earlier. What's the point of the tza'aka is to access our pnim, meaning the moichin are already there. They're just in ta'aluma, right? They're hidden. Right? So then, but if you want to draw more moichin down, meaning to access the makifin, so again, it's the bechin of the Gemara in Nedarim that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu yahiv chachmas ala hakimin. I brought it in my kuntras on Tmima, so I ever got all the way to the end. We brought it, mamash, the last section over there, right? That Hashem only gives chachma to a person who has chachma. The way that the Rebbe is explaining this is mamash that Gemara. If you want to access makifin, you first have to have moichin, pnim. Because again, the only way that makifin enter is once the pnim is fully integrated and absorbed. But if a person can't access their moichin pnimium, then they can't access new makifin. So step one is to integrate what you already have. That's the inyanut tza'aka. There's the Rebbe tza'aka will unlock that, and he means tza'aka mamish, by the way. It's not just a metaphor. Go out into the field, find yourself some field over there somewhere like 45 minutes away in the outskirts of these fields, and scream. Go to Hampstead Heath, whatever, and scream. And if you scream, we can unlock the panim. The Rebbe also says in Sichos Ran, there's the inyan of the silent scream, where a person can just imagine the sound of a scream in your brain. The inside, the internal, the silent screams, a big inyan by the Rebbe, that the Rebbe said, even when I'm standing around people, I can be shouting. That's also something. Okay, but there's like a tikkun to do this. The Breslovers would go to the forest, scream, Abba, scream. It comes from somewhere. There's the Yesh Mekarlazeh. So that unlocks the moichin we already have. Once those moichin, like again, the game of Tetris, that comes down a thing, boom, then the next level comes down. And this is how it goes. And then we're able to integrate the next level. There's still the bechin of pnim u'makiv, right? Because there's makiv. That's when we need to kindle the 7 branches of the menorah in order to bring the makifin that are shefa eloki, that's the bechin of the schach, and the sukkah, that's the bechin of the chuppah, that which is hovering above, and to bring it down below. And then the makif comes pnim, and you know what happens next? There's a new makif. And the pnim needs to be integrated. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes you need to scream a little bit. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's hard. And we integrate that. And then we get a new makif. And this is what life is supposed to be. It's supposed to be journeying from pnim to makif, to pnim to makif, and integrating ever-increasing levels of wisdom, ever-increasing levels of experience, ever-increasing levels of knowledge. That's what life is all about. That's what it means to be human. Ayin Sham Heitev, look back there in the B'tavan and you'll understand this. So Rebbe Nachman explains, because it was quite terse. I mean, we already explained it outside. Rebbe Nachman says again, Nachamu Nachamu. Right, in order to access the hasagas hamakifin, which bring us into the otherworldly and to the olam habadika consciousness of Bayamahu Hashem Echad Ushmai Echad Hatoiv Ametiv Kulai Toiv Das Banisa Mechasarta. In order to get to that place, that's the Ikar Nechama. The only way to get there is through these 2 bechinas, crying out and kindling the candles of the face of the menorah. Shehem Sa'aka, right? Is to cry out, which integrates the pnim and therefore allows the makifin to be born, right? And to enter into the reality that it should hover above us as a new makif. Ukedusha Shivas Haneres, and then to kindle the branches of the menorah, which enable that makif to become pnim. Yeah, these are the 2 levels. And that brings the makifin and allows them to integrate, which again gives birth to new makif, and so on and so forth. Mechail el chayil v'zehu, and that's what Rebbe Nachman wants to darshan here. Yoimar Elokeichem. Yoimar Hainabechinas, meaning in order to get to Nachamu Nachamu Ami, to get to this process of Nechama after Nechama, like waves and waves of Nechama. Yoimar Elokeichem. By the way, how beautiful! I mean, the Rebbe already referenced, right? Shiva, the days of Shiva. And maybe, it's just waves of consolation. Meaning the Rebbe already spoke about Shiva as a time for Hamakam Nachem Eschem, right? Probably, but what's the Iker thing of a Shiva? The ikra thing of a shiva is that people come and they tell the person who's mourning stories about the nifter that make everyone, like all the stories come out about all the things that they did that nobody even knew, right? That's the Nechama. It's like, wow. My hasaga expands and what this person was, or a person gets a little bit of a consolation. They know what death is and what life is. It puts everything into perspective. And those issues that we thought were such massive issues, all of a sudden it's in context. Other people are going to actually die. We're going to leave the world one day. It's like this is just a short little journey, and that becomes clear. It's like
It's I was told
Yeah.
from Shiva, it's actually one of the things that's not the common that's that when you're in this world, so call an Erev Shabbos and they're there, and when they're not in this world, Hamokim us that they're with you wherever you go, everywhere.
Yeah.
Because
And that's
it's not bounded by the physical.
and that's a makif. That's a makif.
Most Russian to me.
Yes. And why? Why is he nachin?
Nacha.
Nacha likim le nacha. Okay.
It takes you wherever you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So before people are in that experience, it could be that idea they'll never encounter. They never really think about that too deeply. All of a sudden, during Shiva, right, the 7 branches of the menorah, there are makifin that are able to enter and become panimian. But first, through a lot of tzaka, through a lot of crying, and then this is the experience, the tzaka, and then the birth of new panimian, new makifin. Says the Rebbe, says Rebbe Nachman, you want to get to Nachamu Nachamu Ami, Yoimar Elikechem. Yoimar Anabachinas Amira B'chashai. Speaking, said the Rebbe, Amira is quiet. Shezebachina Shemen, and this is oil, Shubachashai, Kameshukaz Bezarka, there's Yayin La Ramakala. Yayin, like we spoke out, is loud. B'Shemen B'chashai. Shemen is very silent. And B'Shemen, of course, Ubachina Shivas Haner, Shayim Shemen, right? That we would light the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash with oil. Elikechem. Zebachinas Elikim La Ramakala. So in order to get to that chashai, you need to have the yayin of Aramakala. Bechinas hatza'aka. By the way, yayin we learned in Torah Chof is itself das. You remember? We said that's why the Haggadah is all on yayin, because yayin ve'ikra mitzvah. I'm just turning back to page Chof Tes. Ve'ikra mitzvah b'yayin loharis al tikkun adas. Amar b'reichana pikrin. Right? So, yes. That's what he's saying over here. Loud, right? Sa'aka, vanitzak, part of the Haggadah. So maybe in that moment, there's das that's being moiled as a result of the yayin. You see, that's part of the process.
And the 70.
Huh?
And the 70.
And the 70, beautiful 70 gematria yayin, stunning. See? However, when we're learning, we're scratching not even the surface of the surface. It is endless. Like Rav Weinberg tells a story that in the beginning he had to go to like Geulah, like he freaked out because he started learning Breslev and he simply could not learn anything else. He couldn't open any other sefer and he didn't feel like it was so healthy.
Yayin.
Yeah.
Sod.
Yes.
Also 70.
Yes. Nachon. To give birth to those siders. Nichnas yayin yatsa sod, meaning it's birthed, right? Okay, but again, we don't want to get lost now in rabbit holes. We're just learning simple. It's endless. It literally is endless.
So is the makiv always new?
So
it is the makiv.
Nachon, exactly. And to give birth to that, nichnas yain, yatsa sod, that the sod should emerge from that realm of sodiut and it should come down into a place of gilui, right? That's what it means. Yatsa sod is through the yain. Yain is la ramakala. This is the bechina of elikim. Bechinas hatza'aka. When you have Elikechem, which leads to Yoimar, so then Nachamu Nachamu. Then Nachamu Nachamu. Shal Yidish Nebechinas Elu Zeichen La Sagas Hamakifin, Shua Sagas Hadas Hakadosh, Shizeo Iker Hanachama, Bechinas Nachamu Nachamu, Hanamakif Umakif Umakif. Unbelievable pirish on this pasuk. Nachamu Nachamu Ami is Yoimar Elikechem. Let's finish up. We'll just do to the end of the paragraph. Kala inin anal, says Rebbe Nachman, everything that we've learned now in the last couple of shiurim, hamavur bekitzer al pasuk Nachamu Nachamu b'lashana hakadosh, which is written bekitzer in Nachamu Nachamu. Shamati mipiv hakadosh ba'atzmai. I heard this from Rebbe Nachman's mouth himself, bebeir yoser ksas, and he explained it a little bit more. V'shamti la'atzmi k'moshe shamati. I wrote down what I understood, what I heard, and therefore I printed it. Ubatchila hischal adaber me'inin chaim umisa. But the truth is that before he started to reveal this aspect of chaim nitzchim, right, and being nichlal in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when the das increases, and that being the nechama, right, with which Yud Aleph begins, and then it says Nachamu Nachamu Ami. He first started to speak to me about chaim and misa, about life and death. Anava Amar. Rebbe Nachman announced, and he said, it's interesting, this lashon is found throughout Kisvei Breslov. Anava Amar. Anava Amar. You know, the word anak, it can mean to announce, but it could also mean to answer. Right? Anani b'merchavka, it could be an answer. And the question is like, well, what's the question? Why is it? He answered and he said. And it's taken as a simple thing in Breslov that basically Rebbe Nachman was answering all of our questions. Like anything that he said was an answer to all of the things that we wonder about, all the challenges that we face, all the questions that we have. Rebbe Nachman is always answering us. Ana va'amar. So he answered us. Va'amar. And he said, Bein chayim lemisa, between life and death, in chiluk, there's no difference. Ki b'midas ama. Achas. There's one ama. Right now, a person's buried here, right, in life, and then we're buried there in death. There's no difference. There's no fundamental difference. And we're going to explain that. Rabbi Hita biyade al beis alman, and he was sitting, I guess, in Uman already, which was his house was right next to the cemetery, and he waved his hand, and he pointed to the cemetery. Here we're shaychiv here, over here I lay in my bed, and over there I'm laying one amma below. And there's no difference between Chaim and Maves. Then he started to explain Chaim nitzchim which we're going to learn tomorrow. Bottom line, that a person who has real das. Rebbe Nachman says also this. Take a look in Sichos Sichon and Aleph and other places. A person who really has das barach, to really begin to live on that level of expanded consciousness, like we were describing. Ein chiluk etzli klal ben chaim lemisa. What does it matter to him whether he's alive or dead? There's no such thing as dead. And maybe that's the ikar nechama, right? When a person realizes that about the people that they think are gone, they're not gone. There's no difference. No one ever dies because we are fundamentally eternal. The question is where we live. Over here we live in this realm. Over there, and we carry. Nothing stops. Ein chiluk etzli klal ben chaim lemisa ki davok v'nichla b'yizbarach b'chaim u'v'maisai, because the whole Inyan ikar energy of this person's life is connection to Hashem. Here they're connected to Hashem. There they'll be connected to Hashem. There's no chiluk. There's no chiluk ben chaim l'mavet. Rak achshav b'chayav. It happens to be dirasa b'kan. It's just moving house. Right now I live here. Then I'll live there. No difference. There's no people think like, oh, this guy, he died. He died. What do we mean he died? Zeo, Nigmar, like he died. He turned off like this camera. What are you talking about? He didn't die. He moved. He moved house. It's painful because we would quite rather him live next to us, but it's no more or less painful fundamentally than a person's family member who lives close to them moving to a different country. That's also painful. There's also bechin of mourning there. Second, there's also bechin of mourning there. It's very hard to say goodbye. That's what it is, because we feel the pain of this person no longer being around. But they don't die. Right? They don't go away they don't exist anymore. Where'd they go? They moved. It happens to be they moved to a place, they're off the grid, you can't reach them. Some people, like the hippies, like you can't reach them. And they go into the forest and they're unreachable right now, but they're still here. They're still here. They're as here as they ever were. They moved house. That's what the Rebbe says, a big level of consciousness. Used to be they lived in this world, or in this experience, which is temporary for them and temporary for us. And then they're going to live there. And Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we're going to go into this much more deeply. And he's going to explain tomorrow.
Thank you.
To bring our pneumium in and be moiled numa kifin and on and up and up, bigger and bigger and bigger.
Ani habe vi'ata ha'av sheli shekol kach ohev oti ha'av sheli melech Chai v'kaya על כל נשימה שאני